Hi, I'm Ollie, and I think I've always had an interest in technology and in the law. And when I saw there was a subject at Melbourne Uni called AI Ethics and the Law, I thought that sounded perfect for me. I did the subject, I really enjoyed it, and from there I got an internship at the Centre of Artificial Intelligence and Digital Ethics at the uni, which turned into a job that I'm working now. At the moment, I'm studying AI and legal education. I'm looking particularly at what AI might mean for junior lawyers and paralegals. When generative AI is capable of doing so many of the tasks often assigned to junior lawyers and paralegals, but for a fraction of the cost, in a fraction of the time, and to at least a similar enough standard. There's a question asked about whether there'll still be a role for junior lawyers and paralegals in law firms. However, the question from that is, if there are no junior lawyers, no paralegals, then where do the senior lawyers come from? So one proposal is that junior lawyers will do a lot of the editing work to make sure that there are no hallucinations coming from generative AI models, for example. A question from that then comes how law schools should be preparing students to become junior lawyers. Should they be preparing these junior lawyers to work alongside generative AI? Or does that have risks potentially associated with embedding the kind of biases that are already existing in generative AI into law students? Should law schools be teaching critical thinking? And if they do so, is the right way to do that through teaching students how to use generative AI models? These questions are fascinating and don't have a clear-cut answer. There's a big balance to be drawn between whether law schools should be prioritising a practice readiness approach, where law students are the most capable at going straight into jobs, or whether they should be prioritising the kind of skills associated with lawyering, critical thinking, a kind of client-centred lawyering, and the sort of ethics-focused skills that are really important for lawyers in the modern world.
Hi, my name is Laura. I'm currently a first-year JD student at Melbourne Law School and working as a research assistant for Professor Jeannie Patterson at our Centre for AI and Digital Ethics. So during my undergrad degree, I did the AI ethics and the law subject, which was taught by Professor Jeannie Patterson, and I absolutely loved it. It was very interesting. I decided to look more into it, and I was starting to look for volunteer and internship opportunities in AI. In our current project, my research focused on the use of generative AI in the legal sector, particularly by law firms and courts. And so what I did is I gathered data about the usage of generative AI by firms and the statements by different courts, both in Australia and overseas. I find it very interesting that law firms both within Australia and overseas are very innovative and advanced with applying generative AI and experimenting with different platforms, coming up with their own products, and how courts in Singapore are very innovative as well. I think it is only a matter of time that law schools start to incorporate AI literacy into our curriculums and have our law students, myself included, become more AI literate and ready for this new field of legal practice. And it is overall just very exciting.
So my name's Andrew Lim. I'm studying the Bachelor of Science and the Diploma of Languages at the University of Melbourne. And I was lucky enough to do AI Ethics and the Law with Professor Jeannie Patterson. Way back in my first year. It was such an amazing subject, and I found it so interesting to be able to deal with this nexus of science and technology on the one hand, these hard empirical sciences, and then these questions of justice and equity that are so often unresolved and so often connected to the ways we think about the human condition. I'm currently working on a research project involving deepfakes and another one involving AI and IP. in particular dealing with the consequences of how we regulate and how the law can deal with these areas. There are huge questions surrounding issues of deep fakes, both financially, in terms of scams and in terms of financial losses, but also in political terms as well. We're just seeing this year, with the 2024 being the year of elections, we're seeing across the globe big questions around the idea of truth in media and how media can come to deal with these big questions of working out what is true and what is not, and what role the law may play in that. And in terms of IP, we're seeing big, large language models that can start to encroach on creative industries, and having to ask the question of what copyright, what IP exists to do, and what that might mean in terms of being able to foster an environment where both innovation in technology and those fundamentally human arts, the useful arts and sciences, as they put it in the US Constitution, are protected and allowed to thrive in the modern day and age.